I mentioned in a previous video that this might be the year of peak cinema, and this was one of the movies that would prove that to be true. So let's talk about Napoleon. Napoleon is the latest film by director Ridley Scott, and it stars Joaquin Phoenix in the titular role as Napoleon and Vanessa Kirby as Napoleon's wife, Empress Josephine, and that's pretty much all you need to know about the cast of this movie. Now, a few prominent actors make appearances in this movie, but the movie solely focuses on the story of, well, Napoleon, but also ties in together with the experiences of Empress Josephine under Napoleon. So to give a little bit more detail, Napoleon follows the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, going from a general taking back the city of Toulon to becoming emperor of all of France. And now, while this movie focuses on the life story of Napoleon, a lot of that is tied towards his relationship with his wife, the Empress Josephine. And that relationship, as portrayed in the movie, is a very tumultuous and sometimes toxic relationship. And I know a lot of people who have idolized Napoleon may not enjoy what they see on screen, but it was known back then that Napoleon's relationship with Josephine was a very unique one. Now, Ridley Scott, in choosing to explore the story of Napoleon, focuses more on the relationship between these two, and to expand on that, well, their relationship is haywire. This movie portrays Napoleon as someone really toxic, and yeah, he might have been someone with a massive ego that was very easily bruised, especially by the fact that his wife, Josephine, who's equally toxic, actually cheats on him while he's away on his conquests. And we see in also certain scenes that Napoleon truly is infatuated and loves Josephine, and I'm not sure if she feels equally as strongly about him. And whenever his love for her or her love for him is put into doubt, he responds very negatively. For example, while he was away and they find out while he was cheating, he abandons his troops in Egypt to go back to his wife and basically throw her out of the house. But to say that Napoleon is just the victim here is also untrue, because when it is found out that Josephine cannot bear him an heir to the throne of France, he discards her so that he can fulfill what he believes to be his destiny as the emperor of France. We know that the downfall of Napoleon came when he tried to take Russia in winter, which caused massive losses to his troops and caused him to be exiled by the countries of Europe. And he managed to fight his way back into France, and the countries were united to beat him in the battlefield again, and he was once again exiled until he passed. One thing Ridley Scott gets right in this movie is the action set pieces. There's about 3 big action set pieces, and they are all very immersive, and the direction and cinematography during these action set pieces really engrosses you and pulls you into what's happening on screen. And also, again, practical effects, a lot of extras being used, not just CGI people on this battlefield. So that just makes it feel a little bit more real, and it gives a credit to Napoleon and what he did and his tactics during these battles and what he did to come out on top. Now, I've mentioned that this movie focuses on the relationship between Napoleon and Josephine, and in order to make that work, you need to cast some really good actors, and luckily for Ridley Scott, he has some of the best actors in these roles, with Joaquin Phoenix, who has worked with him before in Gladiator and is always reliable to give a good performance. I've mentioned it in a previous video. Joaquin Phoenix is reliable to give a good performance. Now, what a lot of people found funny was Joaquin Phoenix didn't even try to do a French accent. He just did his normal accent. But again, the standout in this movie to me, which is the emotional core. Once again, another movie with a strong female lead as the emotional core, is Vanessa Kirby as Josephine. I mentioned this in the Killers of the Flower Moon video, that Lily Gladstone and the actress in Napoleon would go head to head as possible nominees for female lead in a motion picture at the Oscars, and I stand by that because Vanessa Kirby is a standout in this movie. So far, from what I've seen online, the reaction to this movie has been kind of mixed, and I can understand why, because one thing for me, this movie feels like it jumps around in time a lot, and it doesn't tell you it's doing that. So unless you are very, very familiar with the story or the history of Napoleon Bonaparte, you are going to be lost for a bit. And I found myself a little bit lost as well. When it starts out, it starts with the French Revolution, and I get that. Marie Antoinette getting decapitated, that's things we know about, but the details of Napoleon's life is very blurred to me. So when it's jumping forward in time, and there's not much age shown through makeup or anything, so you can kind of get lost because it feels a little cut up. And well, I found out that there will be a 4-hour director's cut of this movie coming to Apple TV Plus. So maybe that's where most of the story went, because this movie is 2.5 hours long. So that's a whole hour and a half of story that's been left on the cutting room floor for a theatrical version. So maybe when we go and watch the director's cut on Apple TV Plus, we might come away with a different opinion on this movie because we get the full picture. Now, another point of contention was the portrayal of Napoleon as pretty much a cuck and a simp at times, like this pathetic man who is simping for Josephine. But there are moments of dominance where he's like, I am the man in power here. And, he's egotistical, and he uses and leverages his power over Josephine to get her to do what he wants. That's why I say this is a movie about a very toxic relationship, and a lot of people probably don't enjoy that because they want a movie about wars, about Napoleon fighting in wars. And while we do get 3 really solid battle scenes, a lot of the story follows these 2 characters and their interactions as Napoleon rises up the ranks, and how Vanessa Kirby's Josephine deals with that. Anyway, in my opinion, this movie was a little bit of a disappointment, and I did expect a bit more, but it was still a good time regardless. I still enjoyed the story. The acting was superb. The action set piece directing by Ridley Scott was superb. And then, even outside of that, the cinematography was great. The set design, the costumes, they were all really good and on point. It's just that, as I've mentioned, it did feel a little bit choppy and rushed in a sense. So yeah, that's for me, and maybe some of you would have enjoyed it, but I can't wait to see that 4-hour cut. I give Napoleon a 7 out of 10. Yeah, a 7 out of 10 is pretty solid. I think that's just the right spot where it belongs. It's not the greatest movie. It doesn't compete with Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer, but I think on the strength of its acting and some of the directing, it deserves a watch, and it deserves to be celebrated as a good movie. Anyways, that's it from me. If you have seen Napoleon, please let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Also, I'm still doing the end cards, so please, if you haven't checked out some of these other videos, do check them out, especially my Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon videos, because they kind of tie into this whole peak cinema theme I'm going for.